Very first thing I do when I rent an Airbnb, I always get on Google Maps and Google up the nearest Zales, just so I can buy me an engagement ring, just so I can check the lights in the bathroom at the Airbnb. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. I just add the dots as references just in case. Wow. First thing I like to do when I rent an Airbnb is always check the vents inside the Uber. You just never know. And preferably with an apricot orange crayon. Wow. This method flawless for real. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with Thanos. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. First thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always check the light switches in the bathroom. I just use a cough drop. It's the severe kind to be exact. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. I don't think it's nobody that can get past this. Wow. If they won't let me check the door at the Airbnb with my Luigi figurine, then I won't be renting. There's no way possible I'ma stay at an Airbnb if I can't check the door with Mr. Luigi. Cause it's a flawless, for real. Chicken tacos is my preferred way to check the doors when I stay at an Airbnb. You just never know. And no one can break in or break out without me knowing what this strategy right here is flawless. So basically what I was doing here was disabling the spy cam that was installed inside this air freshener in the bathroom in the Airbnb. And the only reason I knew is because the time was off every time it sprayed. So basically every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the doors with pancakes on a stick. It's the easiest. Can no one break in or break out without me knowing? Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with pumpkin guts. You just never know. Call me paranoid, schizo, it don't matter. But I always check the vents at Airbnbs for spy cams. Call me paranoid or schizo, I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with A1 steak sauce. You just never know. Some people call me paranoid, others call me schizo, but I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with pepperoni pizza. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always use teriyaki sauce, ice cream, and other stuff to check the windows. And sometimes it get ashy, so I use Carmex. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with Jitter Bean triple shot coffee. And this here is a caramel macchiato. And these dots are references. Call me paranoid or schizo, I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check it with my static electricity bottle. Call me paranoid or schizo, I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with mayonnaise. You just never know. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check my windows with ice cream and teriyaki sauce. And this here is a fake spider. You just never know. So basically, every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with tortillas. You just never know. And these dots are references. As soon as I rent the Airbnb, I immediately check the mirrors. And this here's my static electricity bottle. And these dots are references. Call me paranoid or schizo, I don't care. But I always season the chicken when I check the doors at Airbnbs. You just never know. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with Famous Dave's rich and sassy barbecue sauce. You just never know. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with an open cup of applesauce. No one can break in or break out without me knowing. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo, I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with Flamin' Hot Cheetos. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the mirrors with flip-flops. You just never know. And this method is flawless. Some people like to call me paranoid, because I like to hang my piss bottle on the mirror. Man, this ain't no piss bottle. It's a static electricity bottle, bro. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with vanilla ice cream. No one can break in or break out. You just never know. Every time I come online, everybody always asks me, if you so paranoid or schizo, then why you always rent an Airbnb? Because I got donuts to check the doors. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with the remote control to the TV. And these dots are references just in case. This method is flawless. No one can break in or break out. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with Arm & Hammer fabric sheets. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with blue cheese dip. And these dots are references. No one can break in or break out without me knowing. Willie Earl. Don't look at this, Willie Earl. Look at this shit. Look at this. Now what the fuck is this bullshit? This motherfucker seasoning the window at an Airbnb with teriyaki sauce, Willie Earl. What kind of shit is this? I'm getting tired of this shit. I can't stand these new motherfuckers. They weird as fuck. Hush your mouth and calm down, Otis. It said right there, he checking for bugs. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with pepperoni pizza. You just never know. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always go for the most expensive ones. That's why I couldn't afford the Moroccan noodles and had to get the Nissans. You just never know. Every time I go online, I always check my messages. And everybody always asking, if you so paranoid, why you keep staying at an Airbnb and putting teriyaki in people's window? And I always use Dawn detergent when I'm cleaning up the windows at an Airbnb. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always wish I had a puppy like this for security. You just never know. I'm so smart, I went and got my degree from the dollar store just to check the doors at the Airbnbs. Cause I'm always paranoid. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with white bread and the other side molded. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But every time I check the doors at Airbnbs, I always use lemon pepper seasoning. You just never know. I don't know about you, but every time I rent an Airbnb, I always use Thousand Island sauce when I'm checking doors at Airbnbs. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But I always use caramel syrup when I'm checking windows at Airbnbs. You just never know. I just got these plugs, these outlet covers. A friend of mine just gave them to me. I'm gonna try these and use these in the outlets and see if they protect. But first, before I do that, I'm gonna modify them so that they're more safer for me, you know. Bam. Just like that. Oh yeah, I like that. That's perfect. That's perfect. Who is it? I was just wondering if you wanted some cookies. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I come to an Airbnb, I always check the garage first. You just never know. This method flawless for real. I just take me a little bit of motor oil and I just pour it all over the floor. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the door with rice and pasta blend in a savory chicken flavored sauce packet. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. I just add the dots as reference points. Wow. The male seahorse is the one who carries and gives birth to the babies. Platypus is one of the only mammals that lay eggs instead of giving birth to live young. A group of flamingos is called a flamboyance. Sloths only defecate once a week and can lose a third of their body weight in doing so. A group of hedgehogs is called a prickle. A female kangaroo has 3 vaginas. The star-nosed mole has the ability to detect prey underwater in complete darkness with its 22 tentacles like appendages on his nose. When threatened, possums play dead, which is why the term playing possum exists. And the horned lizard is capable of shooting blood from his eyes as a defense mechanism. The male emperor penguins keep their eggs warm by balancing them on their feet and covering them with their broad pouches, while the females hunt for food. Wow. First thing I like to do when I rent an Airbnb is always go to the nearest grocery store and pick up some pancake mix, just so that I can check the doors at the Airbnbs. I always use pancakes and bacon, but it gotta be turkey bacon to be exact. And then I just add my dots as reference points, cause you just never know. And this method flawless for real. I mean, just look at it. Wow, look at that. If another motherfucker call me paranoid or schizo, I swear I'ma lose my shit. Calling me paranoid and schizo. I always check the Airbnbs with icy hot. I just go to the nearest Walgreens and screw the cap off and add my dots as reference points. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the windows with yellow mustard. And I just check it with a Q-tip just like this. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. Every time I go to an Airbnb, I always go to the zoo just so I can see the animals. And this time I seen a gorilla that lost his appetite because somebody pooed it. You just never know. Wow. Call me paranoid or schizo on cur. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the front door with some nerds. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. People always want to call me paranoid and schizo just because I like to check the fence in the Uber with a pepperoni from Domino's. But you just never know. And this method flawless for real. I mean, look at it. I always see snakes outside the Airbnb when I'm chilling with my baby. You just never know. Wow, you just never know. First thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always make sure I check my messages first. And I appreciate you guys for all y'all positive comments and feedbacks that y'all been leaving me. So I just want to let y'all know that I'm always checking the Airbnbs and I'm always reading y'all comments. And you see with this method right here, this method is so flawless because I'm using the tortilla chips. But we all know tortilla chips are thicker and they shape weird, right? So when you put it up there, you can't just put it up there. A person in regular motion wouldn't even be able to figure that out. I mean, look how long it's taken me to figure it out. So yeah, these methods be flawless. You gotta really pay attention. So basically all I'm doing is just trying to find the right gravity point. Just to find a point between balance. You gotta have the right balance. As soon as I find it, it's up there. And anybody else in regular motion wouldn't be able to mimic this. That's what makes it so flawless. So to all you Airbnb hosts that be sending me comments and threaten me and call me stinky and pooty, I don't care. This method flawless for real. Wow. Some people call me paranoid and schizo, but I don't care. Cause every time I rent an Airbnb, I always spray that Velvety Berry Bliss air freshener by Glade in the bathroom. I just give it 2 pumps just like this. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. First thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always check the doors. You just never know. I always bring my static electricity bottles. I just fill them up with a little bit of water, just a little bit. And then I add 1 drop of food coloring in it. I use the orange in this one. And then I just set it at the door and put it in place just like this. And then I use my mark as my reference points. And then I put the blue one up at the peephole. Just in case. I'd rather be safe than sorry. People be so busy trying to call me paranoid and schizo. Just because I like to check the doors at the Airbnbs. I don't care. You just never know for real. And this method flawless. I mean, just look at it. Wow. So basically, just to sum it up, the first thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always ask the host about the bathrooms. You just never know for real. And I always just get my pillow and I just set it in there in my blanket. I always try to get comfy while I'm in the Airbnbs because I don't trust sleeping in the living room or in the bedrooms. I always make sure I pack my static electricity bottles. And I just get my marker and I add my dots as reference points. You just never know for real. And this method flawless. I mean, sometimes it get cold, I just use the blankie. But sometimes I don't because all the humidity in there. But if some people like me, some people don't like just sleeping out there and being exposed. It's just better this way. It's comfy for real. You just never know. I mean, just look at it. Wow. First thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always make me some breakfast in the morning. I love me some breakfast. I gotta eat breakfast every day. It's my favorite meal for real. I'm gonna just take these eggs and just scramble them up in there just like this. Look how fluffy and bouncy they are. Wow. It's just perfect. The right amount of pepper and salt. Delicious sizzling turkey bacon. Wow. It smells so good. Now it's time to get this toast in there. Bing. It's all done. I'm going to take my toast and I'm going to go ahead and spread a little butter on it. Because what is toast without butter? You got to make sure you cover the entire thing just like this. Look at that. That's perfect. Wow. Then I'm going to take a little bit more and rub it on the other one. Just like this. Now it's time to add the bacon. This is my favorite part, actually. Oh, I got too long. I'm going to break it. There we go. Now that's flawless. Then I'm going to add a couple eggs. Look at that. My mouth is so watery. I'm so hungry right now. I just love me some bacon and eggs in the morning. Oh, I tried to get away. Let me put that back right there. Little stinker. There you go. Then I'm going to take the other top and I'm going to close it. Look at that. I'm going to just set it at the door and add my reference points. Perfect. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. I mean, look at it. So basically the first thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always get a hold of the host and make sure they got an air fryer in the kitchen. Just so that I can make my tater tots. I like to put it on 10 minutes and give it that golden brown. And then I dip it in a little bit of nacho cheese sauce. And then I bring it to the light and I put it in place. Just like this. That's perfect. Wow. And then I grab my marker just so I can make my reference points. 'Cause you just never know. And this method flawless for real. I mean, just look at it. Wow. That's perfect. And I always use that brown magnetic marker. Just because you can see it from all angles. You just never know. Wow. People always calling me paranoid and schizo. Just because I like to check the mirrors at the Airbnbs using my nanotape. Well, you just never know. And this method flawless for real. I just put a little bit on my phone and I put it on a sticker on my ball cap. And then the bond's so strong that it can actually hold the phone up without even falling. And then I also put it on my bottle method when I'm checking the mirrors. I just add my dots as reference points. 'Cause you just never know. And I always do this with no hands. I don't never have nobody to help me. So I always just gotta do it myself. I mean, look how strong this stuff is. I had to pull hard just to get it off of there. And if you want to reuse it, you can just wash it off and use it again. You just never know. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always use my static electricity bottles up on the fence to check for the spot cams and intruders. You just never know. And it was at this moment when I knew the Airbnb host was fucked. But y'all want to keep calling me paranoid and schizo, but I keep finding stuff like this right here. And look how this thing detected this aux cord up there. I wonder how long it's been up there. What was it even attached to? Wow. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. Can't nobody get away from this. Wow. You just never know. First thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always check the pillow in the master bedroom. You just never know. And this method flawless for real. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the washing machines using my static electricity bottle. I always just talk to the host first and ask them about their washing machines before I even do anything. I just give me an empty water bottle and fill it up with a little bit of water. And I add 1 drop of orange food coloring in it. And I just press it right up against the glass using my static electricity. And of course the double-sided nanotape. And look at all these buttons on here. Wow. You just never know. And ever since I started exposing all these Airbnb hosts, I've been getting a lot of threats and people calling me names in my messages. But I don't care. I'm going to always check the Airbnbs. You just never know. I mean, just look at it. Wow. So basically, the first thing I do when I rent an Airbnb, I always go pick up some of this lemon flavored Jolly Rancher drink mix. It's the best for real. Oh, never mind that. You just want to get you a little scoop, just like this, and make sure it's good. And then you want to cover the drain, just like that. Wow, look at that. Gotta make sure to cover everything. Get it nice and good. Perfect. Just perfect. Now you want to turn on the water. But you gotta be sure to put it on high. As hot as you can get it, preferably. And look what's happening. Wow. You just never know. But wait. Let it run for a little bit. Look, you see that air bubble? Wow, this method flawless for real. People always calling me paranoid and schizo. But I don't care. I always chill in the bathroom at the BnB's. I just get my light and my Nintendo and I just chill. You just never know. And I always make sure that my reference points is still there. I always gotta check on my static electricity bottle. I always try to make sure it's always there. 'Cause you just never know. And basically the first thing I do when I rent an Airbnb is always go to the nearest GameStop. Pick up that Nintendo Switch and that Mario. That's my favorite for real. And I'll just sit in the bathroom like this all day. 'Cause I don't trust being out in the living room or in the rooms. You just never know. And ever since I exposed all these Airbnb hosts, they've been jumping in my inbox, messaging me, sending me threats, calling me paranoid and schizo. But lately they've been calling me stinky and pooty. But I don't care. I'ma always check the Airbnbs and just chill in the bathrooms. This method flawless for real. I mean, just look at it. Wow. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I always cover up in the bathroom. I just bring my blankie and I come in there and I sit down and I do what I gotta do. I don't trust these Airbnb hosts. You just never know. And people want to call me paranoid and schizo just because I like to cover up in the bathrooms. Wow. I don't care. Of course it get hot under here. That's why I always just make sure I leave a little bit of open and I fan it a little bit so air can get in there and circulate. You just never know. I'd rather be hot than been having people spying on me. I mean, why they want to spy on me anyway? You just never know. And I gotta do this at least 3 times a day. It's kind of annoying and it's a lot of work, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So I'm doing what I gotta do. Y'all always want to call me names like Stinky and Pooty. I don't care. You just never know.